So 3 days after Alexei Navalny died in a Siberian prison, Donald Trump finally addressed the tragedy yesterday and made it about himself. In a social media post, the likely 2024 Republican presidential nominee compared Navalny's death to his own situation, writing in part, quote, "The sudden death of Alexei Navalny has made me more and more aware of what is happening in our country," adding, quote, "We are a nation in decline, a failing nation, MAGA 2024. So he made it about himself and his campaign. Notably absent from Trump's message were any condolences to Navalny's family and no condemnation of the man most believed to be responsible for his death. And that would be, of course, Russian President Vladimir Putin. A lot to get to on this. There's been a lot of reaction to Donald Trump on this, and not everybody is falling in line. I think it's a little bit jarring to hear him talk this way. I hope it is.
It is jarring, and we're actually seeing a continued part of a process. And process began in 2015 when Donald Trump, there was just something wrong. Donald Trump would come on our show. He'd go on other shows. I know he talked to Bill O'Reilly, and it was a constant defense of Vladimir Putin. It was this love of Vladimir Putin and this fear, this absolute fear of ever crossing him, and led him in 2015 to say that Vladimir Putin was a strong leader, a great leader. When I brought up that he killed journalists and political opponents, he shrugged and said, "We kill people too, Joe." And he continued doing that. We've seen now, it's hard to believe, but we've seen now other members of the Republican Party ape that line. And there is right now a connection. Donald Trump, Viktor Orban in Hungary, an anti-West thug that runs Hungary, and Vladimir Putin. And you've seen the Trump right move in that direction. And it is just absolutely frightening and jarring. And unlike anything we've seen in domestic politics, that major figures are now going to the side that, well, people who consider America enemies. And the Wall Street Journal editor-at-large Gerard Baker wrote about this this morning in a piece titled "The Moral Blindness of Putin's Apologists on the Right." And he writes in part, "The only response of all decent people to the death of Alexei Navalny, the brave critic of Vladimir Putin's regime in a Siberian prison camp, is grief, disgust, and unqualified condemnation. It is the sort of event that defines the malevolent nature of Mr. Putin's Russia. But that sort of decency evidently was above the moral reach of some of the more prominent leaders of what used to be the conservative movement." Newt Gingrich saw a parallel that many others highlighted. Navalny's, quote, "death in prison is a brutal reminder that jailing your political opponents is inhumane and a violation of every principle of a free society," he tweeted. Mr. Biden isn't Vladimir Putin. Mr. Biden doesn't invade. Newt then, of course, compared Vladimir Putin to Joe Biden, which is just so grotesque. It's just beyond grotesque. I keep waiting for Newt to grow out of this. I really do. I really do. And he's incapable. He compares Biden to Vladimir Putin, to which Gerard Baker writes, Mr. Biden isn't Vladimir Putin. Mr. Biden doesn't invade neighbors on a false pretext, killing indiscriminately. He doesn't make people who have fallen into disfavor fall from the windows of tall buildings. Has he, Newt? Has he, Newt? Why do you lie? Why do you keep lying for Donald Trump? Baker goes on. If you can't see the difference, then I say respectfully that if you have lost or discarded your capacity for moral reasoning. Let me continue. Jonah Goldberg, conservative columnist for the LA Times, wrote this: "No, Donald Trump does not equal Alexei Navalny." And he writes in part this: "For numerous right-wing Republican figures, the real lesson of Navalny's killing is that Navalny equals Trump. Trump himself invoked the comparison on social media. His first mention of Navalny's name wasn't to condemn his death or Putin's role in it, but to cast himself as an American Navalny.
Oh, God.
Condemning such false moral equivalence was once central to American conservatism. Trump is not an innocent anti-corruption crusader, brutalized and murdered for championing democracy and the rule of law. No, in fact, he does just the opposite. There are ample plausible criticisms of the legal cases against Trump. But even if you agree with all of them, I don't. The notion that Joe Biden is the moral equivalent of Vladimir Putin is a slander, not merely of Biden, but of America itself. And why am I so angry? Why am I so angry about this? Because these are attacks on America. These aren't just attacks on Joe Biden. This is an attack on America that we've seen Donald Trump participating in since he came on our show in December of 2015, saying that American leaders were just as bad as Vladimir Putin, who openly kills opponents. Goldberg goes on and says, indeed, one reason we know it's not true, publicly criticizing Putin's treatment of Navalny can land you in a Russian cell. Criticizing Biden's alleged treatment of Trump can land you in a Fox News studio. Gene Robinson.
Incredible.
There are a few words. You have these freaks, weirdos, insurrectionists, radicals on the far right. They're not even the right now. They're in the Trump death cult of a death cult for American democracy. And to make those comparisons are so grotesque. To compare America to Russia is so grotesque. To compare Trump to Navalny, Trump, who flies around in a 757, who lives in a golden skyscraper, who lives in Mar-a-Lago, where you have Navalny dead, poisoned in a penal colony. All of this is so grotesque. And what is so shocking is this isn't one freak legislator, right-wing freak legislator from Louisiana or Iowa. This is the next Republican nominee for president of the United States in 2024. And Republicans are falling in line, and they're saying, the hell with America. We will trash America. We'll say it's just like Russia, just like Trump's been doing since 2015, just to elect this con artist who wants to undermine America's rule of law and American democracy.
Yeah, you have to assume, actually, that tweet or statement by Donald Trump is the new MAGA party line on Navalny. It is just incredible. Note that he refers to the sudden death of Alexei Navalny as if, he had tripped down a staircase in his house or something like that. No, he was sent to a Siberian prison camp to die, to be killed, probably to be poisoned. Who knows? But he's dead, like anybody who opposes Vladimir Putin. Trump mentions, of course, unfair courtroom decisions. He's still smarting from all the court judgments and rulings against him last week. And so two things. First of all, you have Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the third-ranking official in the United States government, down there bending the knee to Donald Trump. This is serious. This is really serious. And you have the Republican Party essentially turning its back, at least the people who are running the Republican Party, turning their back on NATO at a time when Vladimir Putin is making gains in Ukraine, refusing to authorize new funds, military aid for Ukraine, so it can fight back. Talk to the Europeans very clearly and alarmingly, putting the security of Europe and the world in danger. And this is what the Republican Party is going with. This is what they believe now. It's just appalling.
By the way, Jonathan Lemire, as we look at that picture from Mar-a-Lago last night, if you had any doubt about who's running the Congress, who's running the House of Representatives, there's your answer right there. Speaker Johnson making his pilgrimage to see Trump down there.